Are you dreading your next home repair? Don't. Crew Pros is your one-call solution for everything your home needs. Whether it's heating and air, plumbing, complete roof replacement, whole home generators, and electrical repairs. Our professionals get the job done right. Crew Pros is your single source for high-quality home services at affordable prices. For everything your home needs, Crew Pros. Remodel, repair, replace.
Memphis. Nothing but Memphis. Everywhere we go, it's Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, the beautiful land in the world.
And I'm thankful for this guy who tweeted and said I don't have that fire in my eyes no more. That game right there was for him. That's what I do. I prove people wrong each and every night, and that's for him right there.
Hi, this is Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and you're listening to Grizz 901.
What up, Grizz Nation, and welcome to another episode of Grizz 901, presented by the good people over at Zach Jaworski State Farm, where they treat you like family. We have a fun episode. It is our first draft episode, and we had to bring in the heavy hitters. First of all, this is now the second time we've had Rafael Barlowe on the show, and my actual co-host, Nate, could not be here. He just had his power go out literally an hour before the show started, but we brought in another guy, and that is Sean Coleman. So we're going three wide. Sean Coleman, Rafael Barlowe. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well. A lot less better looking than your other guest, who is much more credentialed to talk than me. But Rafael, good to see you again, sir. Hope all's been well since the locked on days.
All has been well, but I laugh every time I hear that Memphis. That is hilarious to me. But no, all is good. All is good. Looking forward to the show.
How busy are you right now?
Oh man, pretty busy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, between the Locked On podcast 5 days a week to the NBA Big Board newsletter, I try to put out 2 or 3 articles a week, and then I'm doing a bunch of podcasts and like radio appearances. A lot of it is like gambling stuff, and I don't gamble. Yeah. I have no idea when they're asking me the odds. And sometimes they're like early in the morning. Like there was one last week. I live in Dallas, and it was like at 7:25. And then I thought about it. I was like, oh, that's 6:25 in Central Time because the show was in Charlotte. So it's been pretty busy, but I enjoy what I do. So on one hand, it's busy, but on the other hand, it doesn't really feel like work.
So,
right.
Rafael, what is it this time of year? Have you mastered the art of cloning? Have you developed the time turner from Harry Potter so you can be in 4 places at once in a 24-hour period? I mean, what's the source of your secret here?
Really loving what I do, honestly. Like, I joke all the time. Like, I've never had a sip of coffee in my life, and I don't take the no-dos or the energy drinks. It's just, once I'm up, and I just really, really enjoy what I'm doing, and that makes it a lot easier.
Well, I could definitely say from my end, then I'll let Daniel get going. It's always an absolute pleasure to get to talk with you. One of the most talented guys in your field. You do incredible work, so thanks for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, last thing on personal news, the family. Obviously, I know you have a little kiddo. Last time we talked, I think
he's on the way. He's cooking.
Yeah, I was about to say very, very early on. So how's the kiddo now?
He's good. He is 10 months. He'll be 11 months in a week from today. And so last time we talked, he was still cooking. So now he's out. He's crawling. He's active. He's a daddy's boy. He comes with me when I go to like these pre-draft workouts to watch, and he's been to quite a few basketball games. So I enjoy fatherhood.
Yeah, man. Fatherhood, it completely changes you. You don't realize how selfish you were as a human until a little one comes along. You're like, man, I was kind of selfish. Now you only think about my family, my kid, and everybody else. And so it's cool though, man. It's the best feeling in the world. So
you don't think about how much control you had over your day.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, the stuff that I want to get done, I just never ended up getting it done because sometimes I see them and I'm like, I need to go wrestle around with them, play with them. But it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's some of the best thing ever. All right, so we're gonna get into a little bit of kind of what's going on. Obviously, we're talking about the draft completely, and so I want to ask so many different things of you and kind of what you're seeing, tied around the Grizzlies, but the draft overall, because I think that there's obviously so much that we can ask. My co-host, who actually does do this with me, he had a question. So I'm going to start off with his question because I don't even know who the guy is, never heard of his name. And I said, you know what? I'm going to ask that question. So it's a guy out of West Virginia. He said he had to ask you any hopes for Kedrian Johnson out of West Virginia. Have you ever heard his name? Is he even in the draft?
I mean, if he uses eligibility, he is. I mean, he's not in my top 100 prospects.
Okay, there we go. That's what I told him. I was like, I've never heard of this guy. I was like, but I'll ask. I'm not scared to.
Is there like a relationship there, or just friend, or
I don't know. But he predicted that David Roddy would be drafted by the Grizzlies last year, and so now he thinks he knows something about the draft, but he has no clue. So that just shows
one right.
He did.
Roddy was absolutely terrible at the combine, and that was my first time going to the NBA combine. And I just assumed, all these executives there, a bad showing, it's going to hurt his draft stock. He ends up going higher than I thought he would go, and then he played valuable minutes in the playoffs. So,
right.
Well, and Rafael, I'll ask that question. So you talk about the fact that, you went to the combine, you saw David Roddy not perform that well, but then you see the Grizzlies make a move for him. The Grizzlies, who, I would imagine have had one of the better track records, and I'll trust your opinion far more than my own, have had one of the better track records. They typically have their type of guy that they want. But you see him go through the pre-draft workout. It's not that great, but yet there's something there about him that the Grizzlies enjoy. What does that tell you about a player like a David Roddy? The player who's a second rounder who finally goes in the first, didn't have that good of a draft lead up, but he just seemed to fit with what the Grizzlies were looking for. Does that tell you that just sometimes if a guy is there that fits a team's mold, he's going to go regardless of what's out there about him?
Yeah, I think it just says more about the Grizzlies trusting the overall body of work and not letting a bad 2 or 3 days impact their decision. I mean, Roddy had a great year. I mean, he shot lights out, was a matchup problem at Colorado State, and they didn't panic when he didn't play well. And I learned a valuable lesson from that because that was my first time going to the combine. And I mean, there is a recency bias, but if a guy is good for 30 games and he has a bad couple days, you got to go with the larger value of work. And I think that's what the Grizzlies did. And like I said, Roddy played playoff minutes for them. So that was they got really good value for that pick.
Yeah. I agree. David Roddy was a guy that kind of went under the radar a little bit, especially for me. I didn't expect him to be a first rounder at all. I didn't expect the Grizzlies to move back up into the draft again just to go get him right after they went ahead and they drafted their first guy. So, all right, let's get into 3 things I have for you. I want to ask about, any move up targets that you think that the Grizzlies could kind of go after. There's people that you would see that, hey, these are, good matchups for the Grizzlies as in general. But then maybe anybody that you could see falling, because the Grizzlies are notoriously going after guys that might end up falling. So, you can go get those guys who maybe others didn't see and they saw something in them. Somebody they fall just to have that good potential. And the last thing I'm going to ask you is just kind of at pick 25, anybody that you see that fits the Grizzlies into a mold, because we've talked to different people, and there's always, a couple of things that people look for, whether it's length, is it shooting, is it defense, steals, whatever metrics you're using. But I want to ask you, because obviously you're the expert here. So let's get into some move up targets. So the Grizzlies, obviously, they have a lot of people under contract.
Yep.
Is there any way that they could package some players and some picks and move up? Yes. So is there anybody that you see that, hey, it would be beneficial for them to move up and go get these certain guys?
Well, one, I mean, the Grizzlies are hard to predict. If they want a guy, they're going to go get him. And you may not even get a lot of smoke or rumors behind it. Like, I don't remember rumors about Memphis targeting David Roddy or Jake LaRavia last year.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to predict. On one hand, I would assume that they're looking for help at the wings.
Yeah.
But then I figure, you drafted LaRavia, you got Roddy, Zaire Smith, who played the year before, who's coming off an injury-plagued year. So they have young wings there. And then, Kenny Lofton, you got to figure that he's not necessarily a wing. It's easy to kind of write him off, but I mean, like, you have to expect that he's going to at least get an opportunity in the preseason. I don't know if, do they go point guard, like a backup point guard? I mean, we don't know what the Ja Morant situation is going to be like. So with all that being said, Memphis is tough to predict because they have so much talent on the roster, and there's really not a lot of room where you can say a guy can come in as the 25th pick, or even if they trade up, where you can say, all right, I can slot this guy into their top 6 or 7-man rotation. But maybe a guy like Kobe Buffkin could be someone.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to be available at that range, but if he's someone that they like, I mean, history says that Memphis will go get him. He's like your combo guard. I thought he was one of the best finishers in college basketball. He shot 71% at the rim, and college basketball doesn't have a lot of spacing. So he would give Memphis, in my opinion, if this was someone they could target, if they would target another guy that can knock down open shots, but also put pressure on the rim. Not necessarily like Ja, but I mean, who does? But it's always good to have another guy that can get to the rim and make the basic read and collapse the defense and create some open looks for teammates.
Do you think he'd be worth trading up for and going into it? Obviously, I know you were sharing how much you like him, but is he worth the guy that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and trade? Because obviously we don't know what they would have to give up to go get him, but it's obviously going to be a good amount of future draft picks or some prospects that they already have. Is he a guy that's worth it? Like, just in general, just knowing what this Grizzlies team already has on the roster.
Yeah, it just depends on what you have to give up. I mean, I saw like a mock trade where they gave up some valuable assets for OG and Anunoby and Toronto. And so on one hand, I think if they are going to give up assets, it might be for a veteran that can help them win now as opposed to another rookie. I don't think Buffkin will be available, but you never know. But yeah, I think if it's a deal that they like, then I think they also may need to consolidate some of their young wings anyway.
Right.
So they may be able to move up. And I mean, there's a need for wings in the NBA. Teams want young wings, and I think the Grizzlies have some that some teams may covet and may want to move back for.
Yeah, I agree. We're here with Rafael Barlowe of NBA. What is it? NBADraftBoard.com, right?
NBA Big Board.
Big Board. God bless.
I have NBA Big Board and NBA Draft Junkie, so it's easy to get those two confused.
Okay. I'll blame it on that, even though I didn't even see the Draft Junkie part. So NBA Big Board. We're going to go with that. I apologize. I actually did sign up today so I could see all of it. So one, I know it's easy to do, and it's $8 a month, guys. Okay. Listen, I went to Firehouse Subs the other day. I spent $18 on a meal for me. Like, I'm not even a fat kid, but I really wanted the large. I like the meatball sub. It was $18 for a meal. Okay. So I enjoyed that for an hour. Well, you can enjoy your website for many more hours. So just do that. It's $8 a month. You can sign up for the year. I think it breaks down to like $4, a little over $4 a month. So it's well worth it.
Rafael, I'll ask one quick question about the opportunity that's there with these wings. Speaking of your big board, you look at anybody's big board right now, I would say that between that 10 and 30 range, that 70, 80% of the players that are there, not only are they interchangeable, but they're wings between 6'4", 6'8". We talk about what's there at 25, Jet Howard, Dariq Whitehead, Bryce Sensabaugh. You can name these names. When we're talking about potential movement, I know that we talk about what's potentially going to be there at the top of the draft, but with there being so many interchangeable wings in that 10 to 30 spot, does it make it less likely that we'll see movement on the board, after the lottery into the 25, into the 20s? Because it seems like every team that's going to be picking in that area, they're going to have 3 to 5 names that they probably could be comfortable picking. Do you think that makes it to where we'll see less trade activity because more teams are going to be satisfied with more possible options being there?
I think we're going to see a lot of movement simply because the Jazz have 3 picks and the Pacers have 3 picks. So I can't imagine both of those teams bringing in 3 rookies into camp. And Indiana has 4 picks in the top 32. So I think that, there's going to be some movement, whether it's the Pacers moving up and somebody trading back, because there's so many wings that they feel like, well, we can get the same guy at 26 that we wanted at 16 or whatever like that. So I do think it's going to be a lot of movement. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Houston, I mean, do they need another young guy at pick 20? So I wouldn't be surprised to see them move. Either one trade for a veteran, but completely move out of the draft because they just don't need another kid on that roster. So I think it's going to be a lot of movement.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we can't really predict is who are going to take people who are going to move out of draft picks for the future. So there's a lot of up in the air. Let's hit on our last couple of things, and somebody that you could see falling. Is there a player, because we see obviously people's board all over the place, just as Sean was talking about. Is there a player that you're kind of seeing the writing on the wall, like, hey, this guy could fall, whether the Grizzlies go get him or not? Is there somebody you're seeing already there that, hey, this guy is starting to trend in the wrong direction, like I guess the other Thompson twin? Looking at your big board, you have him lower than other people have him. Is that, is he a player, or is another guy that you're looking at that could actually fall in this draft?
Yeah, I'll end up moving the Thompson twin up just from just the intel that I've heard. There are some teams now that are torn between which one would they rather take between Amin and Asar.
Wow.
Amin is traditional. I guess most people have him as the clear-cut better twin of the two. But I was actually at OTE last Friday and just watching him work out. There's not much of a difference, but Asar was the 2-time MVP of Overtime Elite. He's considered maybe the better defender, maybe not as good of an athlete, but Amin is like a 1% athlete, and Asar maybe 4%. But there is a chance that Asar could end up going higher than Amin. So just based off of the intel, I'll definitely move him up when I do an updated board. Now, as far as guys falling, what's tough is that I think in this draft, maybe 15 through 30 is fluid. If a guy like Jet Howard goes 15, I wouldn't be surprised at all. If he goes 25, it wouldn't surprise me. If he falls to 30, it wouldn't surprise me. But I do think somebody is going to fall. One, because the kid out of France, Victor Wembanyama's teammate, Bilal Coulibaly, is moving fast. I mean, his trajectory over the last 18 months has been crazy. He's a guy that was just playing in their under 21 league at the beginning of the year, looked absolutely lost in the showcase game between Wembanyama and Scoot. Most people don't even remember him getting time in that game. And then they had a few injuries and he was forced to play. And then he's just been, playing lights out, had 16 points in the closeout game as his team they advanced to the French League finals. And you just don't see, and especially in Europe, a team that has 2 teenagers playing a huge role,
right,
getting to the finals. So I think that has helped him out. And it's going to be a risk because he's not going to be available for any workouts for teams, simply because their finals start on June 10th. Even if they get swept, there's going to be a small window between the end of their season and the draft. So teams are going to have to draft him just based off of what they've seen and doing their homework and research, not really getting a chance to know him. I think he's a big riser. I think a guy like Max Lewis could rise, but Max Lewis could be available late in the first round. He's a guy that I had a chance to watch work out live in Chicago. The interesting thing for me is Bobby Clintman. He has a guarantee somewhere. Somebody shut him down. He didn't do the combine. And there's been like 4 teams, like people are trying to guess which team. And actually the Grizzlies are one of the teams that has come up as the team that possibly gave him a guarantee. The others are Indiana, and that's because they have 3 picks. Utah, they have 3 first-round picks. And then just Oklahoma City because that just sounds like a Sam Presti thing to do.
Right.
But the Thunder, unless they trade up, they have pick 12, which I don't think he'd have a guarantee at 12, and then their next pick is at 37. And I don't know if it's smart to not go through the process to be the 37th pick, especially when he could rise. So it's from my knowledge, it's a lot of people are guessing it's either Memphis, because Memphis has, if they've just done some unconventional things in past drafts, whether it's move up or whatever. So Memphis, Indiana, or Utah are the teams that a lot of agents are guessing is the team that gave Bobby Clinton a promise.
Wow. Sean, what do you got?
Clinton makes sense. I know that I believe that KOC, had him moving up his draft board and, had him going to the Grizzlies here recently. And it makes sense because I believe, with his size, he can, kind of play that up from the wing. He could be a big plus a wing instead of, a guard plus a wing and things like that. But speaking of that, Rafael, the Grizzlies have had this search for a wing. They went with, I talked with you the night that we picked Zaire Williams back in 2021, and we've since picked David Roddy and Jake LaRavia. Shot quality was a big thing that Zach Kleiman pointed out after last year's draft. Yeah. But when you look at there being so many of these interchangeable wings, what is one or two, for lack of a better way of putting it, statistical things that stand out, or what are one or two skills to you when you've got this group of 10 to 15 wings, late first round, early second round projection? What are one or two skills that really stand out to you that make you say, hey, this guy stands out among a large group of peers that play the same position?
I mean, for me, it's a really simple answer, especially when I look at it through a Memphis Grizzlies lens. You have your franchise guy in Ja Morant. Mm-hmm. You've got your secondary guy and Jaren Jackson Jr. So now you just need the complementary pieces to make life easier for them. So for me, that number is 3-point shooting percentage. Who is the best floor spacer that makes it difficult for you to leave your man in a corner to help out on Ja? And I mean, Luke Kennard was great for Memphis this year. So if you can get another knockdown shooter that can be on the opposite wing as Kennard, I mean, Ja's already phenomenal at getting to the lane. Now it's even easier because teams have to pick their poison. So for me, it's the 3-point shooting, and then maybe length. You want some guys that can defend. I mean, we've seen in the playoffs how valuable guys are that can defend up and down the switch and have some size. So those are the two things that stand out to me.
All right, Rafael, a few more minutes. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. A few more minutes. Let's talk about pick 25 because Grizzlies, obviously, like you just said, and they can move anywhere. They're unconventional. They could stay at 25 and offer somebody that, hey, you're not going to get past us if you're available. But it's so all over the place. Is there any, just a kind of a number of guys that you're looking at, hey, these guys would fit really good? I expect them to be there around, between 20 to 30. Obviously, that's a big number. But in that area, in that range, is there any number of guys that you could say, hey, these are the guys because I have my favorites that I think they should go after, like a guy like Bryce Sensabaugh, but some people don't love him in some areas, but I just think that what they actually need in the wing, I think that'd be a good fit. So is there anybody that sticks out to you that, hey, these are the perfect guys for the Grizzlies right now as they currently are constructed?
Yeah, like Jet Howard, and I'm not a real big Jet Howard guy because I think that he's not a good defender, and he only averaged 3 rebounds per game despite being 6'8", 215. Yeah. But I think it makes sense for Memphis in a sense because you have a good defensive team, and he does have some upside as a guy that can attack a closeout and create his own shot if he needs to. So he's someone, if he's available, I mean, I think that, maybe the reason why he didn't defend is because the ankle injuries were a lot worse than we thought. I know he missed some time at the end of the season. So I definitely do my due diligence on that. If you want to go defense and then upside, Ryan Rupert he's a French prospect, but he played in New Zealand. I live in Dallas. He did all of his pre-draft training in Dallas. And I know it's easy to look at the numbers. I want to say he shot 27 or 28% from 3, but he missed 2 months of the year with a broken hand or a broken wrist. And that's not always in the stats when you just see the accounting numbers. But he's long arms. He's 6'7", had a 7'2" wingspan, likes to defend. His comparison coming from him is Mikal Bridges. And he thinks that he could be that type of player. And one of the reasons why he says that is because he's kind of been boxed as this 3-and-D guy. But he said that was the role that he had to play as a professional in Australia last year to earn minutes. But he feels like he has more to his game than just being a 3-and-D guy. He's the one that, you got to figure in the West. I think for like a team like Memphis, on one hand, you can draft for upside, but on the other hand, I think because you have your pieces in place, you may start drafting for fits. Like down the line, like, all right, if we have to play Luka Doncic in the playoff series, we need someone that we know that can defend him. Or even like Denver, you may say, all right, we need another big body behind Steven Adams, somebody that can just, provide us with 6 hard fouls and someone that Jokic just isn't going to move like loose furniture. So another name that comes to mind, I think if the shooting continues to progress, and I think he could be a good fit, Kobe Jones from Xavier. He's a guy that, he's not like the sexiest prospect, but he just does a little bit of everything well. He rebounds, he passes. He shot 38% from 3 this year, which is like 10 points, 8 or 9, 10 points higher than what he shot the year before. He's always kind of been like a reluctant shooter, but if he can just become more confident and knocking down open shots, he's like that valuable connective tissue that I think plays winning basketball. So he's someone that I definitely think could be in that range. Maxwell Lewis, I talked about him. I think if they want to go young, and he may or may not be available, but again, this draft is so fluid. Gigi Jackson is a guy that I think that they should really take a long, hard look at. Gigi was the number 1 player in his high school class, decided to reclassify up, started the season at 17 years old. And he is a guy, and I strongly believe if he stays in his class, his normal class, he's the number 1 pick in 2024. At least the preseason favorite to be the number 1 pick in 2024. And I just think he's really talented. There are some concerns about maturity, but he's 18 years old. He's only eligible in this draft by like 14 days. If he were born 2 weeks later, he's not even eligible to be in this draft. Doesn't turn 19 until mid-December, but he averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds per game, high upside as a shot maker. And so I think if it's a situation where the Grizzlies are like, he can't help us win right now, but we know we wouldn't be in the range to select him next year, then we'll take a flyer on him at 25. Maybe if he spends, the season with the hustle, I think that could be a really good value pick at 25 if they stay at 25, which,
Memphis, exactly. And that's the funny thing is like you're laughing just like we all are as fans and people that cover this, closely. It's laughable because honestly, we have no idea. And I don't even know if they know, but they're just kind of like, all right, if we want a guy, we'll go get him. Sean, we'll get you out of here in a second, Rafael. But Sean, what do you have? Any more guys on here?
No, Rafael, that just excellent coverage as always. I will ask you this question. Say Memphis does move that, number 25 pick in a trade for a vet. That puts the focus on the second round. We've obviously got the one extra 2-way that's now going to be on the NBA rosters moving forward. I know for a draft guy just such as yourself, that's probably exciting to see more guys, outside of the first round get an actual shot in the NBA. But maybe just 1 or 2 guys who you think could be there. I think that we saw, I forget his name off the top of my head, but the center from Alabama who came into the class late. He's been working out with a lot of teams here recently. He seems to be a guy that's kind of rising in that second round. But just maybe 2 or 3 guys. Memphis has the 45th and I believe 56th pick. Just some interesting names in the back end of that second round that you really think could be value picks in that area.
Yeah, were you talking about Charles Bediako?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah,
I believe that he went to Alabama. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I've heard some good things. I actually heard from a player that he was on his team in a workout and they won every matchup. So he's someone that is intriguing, that definitely could be available. The thing about the 3 2-ways, I think is offset because of the NIL. I think that kind of like evened it out. When you first hear about it, you're like, oh man, guys are going to have this opportunity, but if it's a guy that's going to like a Power 5 school, his NIL money will be more than the money for a two-way, and more than likely, it's I guess you have to choose. Do I want to play in the G League in front of like 60 people, or do I want to play in the SEC and all that? And I mean, some of the money that's been thrown around is crazy. I mean, I talked to one agent, and he had his player back out of the draft and said he got a $700,000 NIL deal and a car. So it's like, how do you tell a kid, you need to like take this two-way? So I said that kind of negated it. So I think it made the class a little bit weaker, especially considering the 2024 draft is not considered strong. I think a lot of guys that were on the fringe in the top 40 are like, no, if I go back to school, I can get NIL money and I'll be a first-round pick next year. So it's going to be interesting. It definitely helped that there's some guys that probably will get two-way contracts that probably would not have gotten one if NIL wasn't around and the classes were a little bit stronger. And then I also think some teams are just not going to use the extra the extra two-way contract. But guys that I think it's kind of funny, and maybe I'm a little biased because I've watched him for a while, but Drew Timme would be a guy that I would like. If I'm Memphis, I would have my eyes on as one of the last picks in the second round or a two-way guy. He's a good passer. I mean, he doesn't pass the eye test because he's not jumping out the gym or blocking shots. But I mean, he is a phenomenal low post scorer, and I think, and I still believe in the post game, and I think maybe in a playoff game he could be a wild card where. A team goes small and you have a guy that you can just give the ball to on the block and he can punish a team for switching. Oscar Tshiebwe from Kentucky, I think he could be available in that range. Phenomenal rebounder. I mean, it's just hard to find a guy that goes after rebounds like that. He's a little small at 6'9", but he does have a defined role that he could provide for Memphis. But then you can always go with shooters. Imani Bates could also be in that range. And he's a really good scorer. The big concern with him is his shot selection. And it's weird because he has so much confidence in himself that it leads to bad shots. And I just thought about it. He's a name that people in Memphis are familiar with. So maybe, that could be something that people are like, I don't know. We saw how that worked out. And then Steph Lundy is a guy from Penn State that I like. A little older, 23 years old. May not have the upside that people think, but he had a 6'10" wingspan. He shot 40% from three. And what I like about him is that he's a really good shooter on the move. Not like Luke Kennard, but he's a guy that you can run on action and pin down. So, I mean, I think the Grizzlies are, number one, they're in a great situation because, like I said, they have their guys, and now all you need to do is find the pieces to fit around them. And I think in this draft, you can find some guys that can come in and help.
And we know that they value movement shooting, and with some of the injuries that they've had to the front court, get another developmental big. Well, you've seen how Xavier Tillman worked out. You've seen how Kenneth Lofton worked out. Finding the next guy kind of in that mold will definitely work out. So it's a great insight, Rafael. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I have a question for you guys. Do you think Memphis is going to consolidate some of their talent for a guy that has like a bigger name? Because they have so many young pieces that I don't know if it's possible to give everybody proper time to develop. Do you think a trade is on the horizon where they can like consolidate some of those guys?
I'll go before Sean. I'm just going to say, I pray to God that I hope they do. Sean, I know probably Sean's fiending over here trying to say anything you can. So Sean, I'll give you the floor.
No, when it comes to it, Rafael, yes. So the answer is that, when Zach Kleiman came to the end of the year press conference, he made the mention, should we have doubled down on talent like we did? And last year at the draft, I asked him directly, when you look at these guys, it seemed like shot quality stood out as the main defining factor between Jake LaRavia and David Roddy. And you saw that when that didn't work out, he went out and he got Luke Kennard. And then he said at the end of the year press conference, should we have doubled down on talent? Well, I think that Luke Kennard was kind of the tip of the iceberg, in that the Grizzlies are figuring out, hey, through last summer, development had been our key. That's what we had been so good at doing. Now this summer, it's the understanding that you've got to balance out certainty with development. So I definitely do think that while Zaire, while Laravia, didn't develop as you would like for them to, you may not necessarily have them in a place themselves to be trade candidates in a potential deal. But I do think with Tyus Jones, and I do think the fact that he's more of a regular season value than a postseason value, I think you couple him with some of our present and future first, plus maybe one of those young wings, you go out and you get that certain guy, like an OG. We would all love McHale, but that's probably not happening. But I do think that the Grizzlies go and find somebody that they can bet on, somebody who has a bit more certainty and upside than Dylan Brooks provided, get that guy to come in, and then keep a Roddy in either a Laravia or a Zaire to continue to develop. And then you're balancing out both the certainty of a wing that you can rely on, but ought to complement our core three, but also that development. So I think they're going to focus on that type of trade. Maybe not a huge superstar bringing in type trade, but balancing out getting that guy with still having a few pieces to develop.
And that's what I've been thinking about. But I'm like, depending on what happens with Ja,
right?
Can you afford to trade Tyus Jones if there's a 20-game suspension?
Yes.
That's what makes it hard for me to figure out, because I think Tyus would be like the piece that another team would want, but I mean, you may need him to start the season.
Could we not just go get his younger brother?
You can, but I mean, who's San Antonio's point guard right now?
That's it. That's the problem. We'll send Tyus for Trey, and we'll add in a Devin, Vassell or Keldon Johnson.
Yeah, that would be a win.
Throw him a bunch of picks. Hey, here's Tyus with Wemby for a little bit.
Yeah, that would be a win.
I do one more question. I'll get you out of here. Julian Strawther, I love him. I love his game. I know that he's been, all the way up into the 20s on some people's big boards, all the way down into the 40s. Like, he is a very wide range first, second round. I just think he would fit the Grizzlies as a team as a whole. Do you like him, dislike him? Is there anything about his game that maybe you see fit or don't fit with the Grizzlies?
Yeah, I think he's a good fit. He's a 40% shooter from three, average 15 points a game. He's not like this 18 or 19-year-old. He does have 3 years of experience. He's gotten better every year. But the most underrated aspect of his game that people don't talk about is he's a very good wing rebounder. He averages about 6 rebounds per game on the wing. And I think he would be a fit. I think he's more so of a plug-and-play, ready-to-go guy. And I think for a team like Memphis, that's what you need, because, I mean, the Grizzlies are – they're a young team, but they're not like the young and up-and-coming team anymore. They're like a team that is expected to win some playoff series, and I think he's a guy that can come in and help right away.
Yeah,
Rafael, what's the most underrated part of your actual basketball game? I mean, are you a sharpshooter from the corner? Are you a connector? Well, I mean, your actual game itself, what's the strength or more underrated aspect of Rafael Barlowe's actual game on the court?
Well, it used to be my speed, but I lost my first step with age. So now I'm like I'm like the game manager. That's bringing the ball up court and getting like assists that I didn't even really create for guys. It's just they did all the moving and I passed it. So no, I mean my first step is gone. And I didn't plan ahead. I didn't plan for the day that I would be 40 plus. So I never worked on my jumper.
Rafael Tyus Jones Barlowe. There we go.
I like it. All right,
I turn the ball over a lot more than that, though. So,
yeah, you can't compete with his assist to turnover ratio.
Yeah,
those Jones boys. All right, well, he is Rafael Barlowe. Rafael, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. It's always a highlight of mine, and we're going to have some other people on eventually as we lead up to the draft. But when you said, what date you're coming, I'm like, all right, sweet. We can start with you. It's only going to get worse, but that's okay. Well, at least we'll have the best for first and not best for last. But I can't thank you enough for coming on here and hanging out with us.
Yeah, anytime. I mean, like I said last year, you want me on, shoot me a message. I can make it happen. So we can do it again right after the draft if you need.
Dude, I definitely will.
Always good hearing your opinion, Rafael. Thanks for all your time and keep up the great work. Nothing but the best to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Rafael, thank you. We're going to keep on going, but we'll let you get out of here. I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
All right, thanks again.
All right, Sean. Rafael Barlowe, man, he is the absolute best, dude.
Yes.
The absolute best. Like, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's busier than anybody else in this world right now, except for the other draft people. But the draft guys are the craziest busy right now. And so I'm glad that he was able to make time for us for sure.
Absolutely. And the thing that stood out about Rafael, he's been a fast riser. There are some very talented, very, very talented draft minds. One that comes to mind is Mavs draft and others, on Twitter. There are some extremely talented minds. But one thing that stands out about Rafael, and this is no slight to anybody else, the work that he's put in, the travel that he's done to Europe to really define, his craft, the dedication. He talks about the love of it. I was joking with him, but you truly see the love in his efforts and the fact that he was able to take on the opportunities that he's had. He's a great overall mind, does an excellent job. The quality is matches the quantity in terms of his hard work and the quality of his talent. He's a great draft mind, and you always learn a lot more than you did previously had in mind once you talk to him. So always a pleasure talking with Rafael.
For sure. All right. So this is obviously, I'm going to take a hot route real quick. And so I was planning on going a different direction with this. Rafael went much longer than I expected him to kind of hang out with us. And so I tried to get him out of here at some point, but I know he would have stuck around the entire show. That's not what I wanted to spend his time on. He's got other things, bigger, better things to do. Because you're on here and not Nate, I had other segments planned. We're going to spend another 10 to 15 minutes max, and then we'll end the show. Do you have 10 to 15 more minutes?
Sure, let's go.
I'm going to ask you about guys that you like in particular. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go down that draft, a little bit more of the draft. We'll go all in. I know you have guys off top of your head. You don't really need to plan too much. So, but before we get there, I do want to say a little bit about our number one fan here, Zach Jaworski, State Farm. I needed them this week, just so everybody's clear. I actually have a claim put in. Don't tell anybody. Don't let my wife know I'm telling you this. But she lost her wedding ring. So thank goodness, we have insurance on her wedding ring and her wedding band. Thankfully, I called Zach at 901-794-3691. His team is taking care of me. I'm in the middle of a claim trying to handle that. But thankfully, we have little things like this that's insured. It's the wedding ring. Obviously, it sucks that we lost it somehow. Don't know what in the world happened, but it's been a crazy past couple of weeks. And so things like that happen. So if you need insurance on your mortgage, your car, even your jewelry, please call Zach and his team at 901-794-3691. All right, let's go to you now. Sean, is there anybody that you're targeting, that you're looking at in particular for this draft? Because as Rafael was saying, you can go all over the place. But I do think it's important to kind of target a few guys that if the Grizzlies do stay at 25, here are the guys that you like.
Yeah. Chris Murray is who stands out from Iowa. Keegan Murray, obviously, his brother went number 4 last year with the Sacramento Kings, had an absolutely outstanding year, set the record, for 3-pointers in a season by a rookie. The reason why I like Chris Murray is because I do think that if the Grizzlies pick 25, wing probably does still make sense to go to, because if they can get a guy like a plug-and-play guy, like we were talking about Julian Strother, but I think Chris Murray is that guy who you could play at the 3, play at the 4. You could put him in there with Roddy as being a guy that could allow for you to have, even though he's a rookie, he's an older one. I think that he's someone you could trust right off the bat. That could allow for you, even though they're on the roster, to still take your time and really helping Zaire as well as Jake LaRavia be able to find their mark even into the season. So Chris Murray really stands out, even though he's kind of that high floor older prospect. We know the Grizzlies have had a great track record of taking those type of prospects and making them have more of an immediate contribution, making them into a better player in an immediate fashion than many people thought. I think Chris Murray is that type of guy in this draft. Now, beyond that, it becomes more of a bit of an upside swing. He mentioned G.G. Jackson. I haven't really looked at G.G. Jackson that much, but someone I do like is Derek Whitehead from Duke. Derek Whitehead probably would be in my top 3 because I do think that the pedigree is there. I do think that there is some skill there scoring the ball. He gives effort on defense. I think that he is the type of guy who could be another type of lottery ticket type move for the Grizzlies, that they could come in and possibly from some of the things that they've learned that worked with Zaire and others and things that didn't, maybe apply it to him from the beginning, and maybe you can make him a steal later on in the draft. And G.G. Jackson kind of fits into that mold as well. And then I'm always going to be a guy who, as much as I preach defense in terms of NBA talents that are already here, I'm a guy who likes offense when it comes to picks. And Bryce Sensabaugh stands out as a guy that makes sense. A guy that, I think that, I know KOC had called him a TJ Warren type player. We talk about, I know a lot of Grizz Twitter likes this microwave scoring option that we talk about. Well, I think that with Bryce Sensabaugh, you get that aspect of things. Maybe not necessarily a guy who's going to sit here and create a shot 80% of the time, but I think that there's some very good shot value and skill sets with him. So those are just a few of the names that really stand out to me that could be in that 25 range if we stay there.
Yeah, obviously I love Dariq Whitehead. I'm a Duke fan, and so I watched his game blossom just in this season, just in general, where he obviously had the foot injury, and it just looked like he had it, but he was just a step slow all season long, and I think that was due to the foot. If he's fully healed, which he should be, he's young, he should be able to bounce back. I think he's having a procedure, or he just had a procedure done, which should allow him to be back and be ready for this season. He's a guy that should be a top 10, top 5 talent, more than likely. Like if he was healthy and had a normal season, I believe that he played up to his expectations. He's easily going in the top 10 this year. And so that's what I look at when I look at players that the Grizzlies could target. Like you were saying, Bryce Sensabaugh, I brought that up to Rafael as well. I think he is a good, microwave scorer. I think he's a good shooter. I think he's somebody who could be okay at defense, right? We have good defenders, okay? It's time for us to look at the offensive side of things, look at the shooting, and I think that you hit it, on the nail on the head. A guy who is a microwave scorer is Terquavion Smith. He has been very much – he's just a small guy. But if you're talking about a backup point guard, let's say that he somehow does fall, and the Grizzlies can find a way to jump up in the draft, package both second-round picks, and they jump up early in the second round. He could be a guy that they target for the simple fact that he does do a good job of handling the ball. He can get he's lightning up and down the court. He can also shoot. So if you're looking at something that that they have wanted in the past, he's also a guy that could actually fill the ball, fill it up. And then at that point, you surround him with the big, taller guards, the taller forwards, and so that's somebody who I would target if they did somehow trade back. That's what the Grizzlies. You never know at this point. They could package and get somebody decent, like a vet of some sort, and move back into the 28 to 35 range, and still get the guy that they may have wanted anyway, in a sense.
Absolutely, and let's also put this into context. Every year we can talk about the draft and we can get excited about this guy and draft and that guy. Rafael Barlowe was talking about G.G. Jackson could be a definite lottery pick in the 2024 draft. Those are the type of guys that you have the luxury of swinging on if you're the Grizzlies, with how much talent that they have. But we also know that the Grizzlies, again, and I think that this stands out, we know that the Grizzlies have doubled and tripled down on going young, on building through the draft, having confidence in their development. Again, as much as we talk about these different guys being available at 25 that we can go after, I still think that it's important to recognize that they are available in 25 in what isn't necessarily considered to be one of the best drafts that's happened in recent memory. So at the end of the day, as exciting as it may be to potentially go up and get one of these guys at 25, I still definitely don't think it makes a lot of sense in this draft to trade up. And I do think at the end of the day, the best option for the Grizzlies, or where they're going to get the most long-term value out of this number 25 pick, is using it in a package to go get more of a certainty when it comes to a veteran player. So, I don't mean to sit here and, throw some cold water on a draft show and speculation and things like that. But I definitely do think if we're looking at long-term value, that remains probably the most valuable play with this pick.
When you look at this draft, and this is the first thing that stuck out to me as I'm seeing the mock draft boards and the big boards, what I see is a 5 to 8 man draft, like a good 5 to 8. You feel confident in those, and you're okay with that. From at that point, whether it's 5 to 8, whatever it is, all the way down into like the 18, 19 range, I think it's just pure upside.
Yeah,
I think that's what it looks like to me. I think it's guys that have the upside, have the potential, have never really shown it, but it's there and you can kind of see it. And that's what I got to see right in that middle. And then from there, it's the guys who are good, but had an issue, such as, Dariq Whitehead. He's very good, had an issue in the season, whether it be an injury or whatever it might be, or maybe he's young, as you were talking about with GG's. Like, there's so many guys that there's just something there, but they did play well, but there's also just something there. And there's also the older guys as well that, hey, they just aren't the 18, 19, guys that they could be 20 and 21. And so they're not as, higher upside guys that they're in the draft. So I think it's just so all over the place. I really think that the Grizzlies do a very good job of finding that mid-range, that role player talent that's high end, which creates your floor. And I've talked about this in the past. I think it was with you, is you're raising your floor. And so your team is really good regular season wise. Your team is always good. The problem is can you find those talents that can take you over? Can you be one of the 8 guys that's on the floor in the playoffs?
Absolutely. And the other thing that stands out is that, like I mentioned to Rafael, and then he talked about, when you look at that 10 to 30 range in this draft, nearly 80% are combo forwards or combo guards. Those guys that can play 2, 3, maybe some 4, those 6'4" to 6'8" guys. And so what does it come down to? I think that each team, you can make sense of each team that's picking, in the late lottery, through 25 or the Grizzlies pick. That's 10 to 15 teams right there that you could put 3 or 4 names on there that make sense. So it's going to come down to what does each team value? And we've got every year we're going to have new decision makers for this team. Do they go pure upside? Do they value offense over defense? Are they like the Grizzlies in which they want to see guys who will offer value in a lot of different areas? I think that what stands out in this draft is we'll probably start to learn a bit more about what each team values based off the prospect that they pick, because I think it's going to become more of what each team actually looks for, what specific aspects of prospect evaluation they put emphasis on. And I think that's what's going to matter in these type of drafts where you've got a big pool of players who could go anywhere from late lottery, maybe into the late first round.
Yeah, I think it's open-ended, man. I think this has been one of the drafts that I don't think there's been as much talk and knowledge of what direction everybody's going. I really do think this has been one of the more, I guess as Rafael was saying, the more fluid drafts where a guy could just shoot up the draft board like it was in the past. And you kind of had an idea that he was good and he was going to go there. But now I feel like it's everywhere. And I don't know if it'll get more zeroed in as the actual draft gets closer to time. But as you know, we have, our own idiot that's on the co-host of this show, and he can predict people to actually be and get drafted as in David Roddy. And so if our resident idiot can do that, so I think that even I could probably figure out a way to, predict somebody this year.
Possibly. But at the end of the day, the other thing that I'll say about, the draft is that, even though we talk about the fact that the Grizzlies are, potentially the value this year is using that 25 pick to go get, another guy who's already in the NBA that could be a top 6-7 player in the playoffs. I don't want to take away from the fact that the Grizzlies' skill of identifying talents late in the draft, that is going to continue to be a needed skill as we pay Desmond Bane $35 million a year. Some are predicting that he could get a 5-year, $180 million plus contract. When you have him, Jaren making 80 to 85 plus million, then the Grizzlies' ability to get value out of guys on those rookie contracts, and they're going to be picking late, hopefully, because they're going to be successful during the regular season in the playoffs. That's going to remain a needed skill. It may just not necessarily be that important this year, when it probably becomes more of a clear understanding that they probably need to consolidate and go get more of a veteran guy that's got more certainty. But that skill for them to be able to get those high floor guys that they can eventually develop into higher ceilings, and some people thought that's going to be a key skill on rookie contracts as time goes on.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more with that, because and it could be this year and even, last year, these guys, they're going to pretty much, they're grooming them and just getting them ready and helping them develop their talent as the Grizzlies are actually able to compete for championships. They're able to do it this past season, and it just things happened, right? But they have the potential and the talent going forward, and especially they're locking up their key core to where now all these other guys could be what tips, the iceberg, whatever, the straw on the camel's back, that just the one little thing that actually puts them over and to makes them be championship ready. And so not like our guy who I called, Nate, I called him an idiot. He said he's a draft prophet. So draft prophet. Sean, you were my help tonight. You were my knight in shining armor, the guy who I went to, the guy who I leaned on, the guy who I put all my hope and trust into tonight. Sean, can't thank you enough for coming hanging out with us, man.
Hey, I call this leverage and feature conversations. You owe me one, maybe two now. So
It was fun. Anything else you have before we get out of here?
No, just always a pleasure. Always available to join when it happens. And like I say, one thing that I will definitely say I enjoy about Grizz 901 is y'all do a great job of getting some really, really good talents to come on here and talk with y'all beyond, the quality that you and Nate offer. But yeah, it's always fun talking draft. And it's especially, that's the big key that I think we take for granted now, because we're now 4 to 5 years into this regime.
Right.
Grizzlies fans, before Zach Kleiman came into place, draft night was always a dread. It was something that we never really truly looked forward to, because we knew it was very unlikely we were going to get any value of it. Now it just becomes second nature that, hey, the Grizzlies are probably going to have a good draft in some way or another. So it's going to be fun to see what eventually happens, even if it may be just second round picks this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing that sucks is like you're like, it could be the second round picks only, whatever. But in the end of the day, like that's really where you can find big talent that maybe people didn't that passed over, or people that weren't sought after so much. And if you actually do your work as a guy like Rafael does, but our front office does, that's where you find the diamond in the rough, man. And I think that this front office does a really good job of doing that. And so I'm excited. I'm already excited for the next season. Last question for you. We'll get you out of here. Who's winning the NBA Finals?
I'm going to go with Denver. I think that even if they're going to Miami, I think Denver's offense is going to be consistent enough to be able to figure out how to have success late in games. Listen, Miami, the secret to their success are those fourth quarter defensive adjustments. They absolutely are by far the best defensive team in the fourth quarter, but I do think that Denver can play well enough within the first three quarters to have a strong enough lead and get some consistency going between Murray and Jokic. I think Denver still wins it in 6.
So when they get out of Miami and they're heading back to Denver, what's the numbers? 2-2?
I say it's still 2-2, but I think by that fourth game, I think that one of the main storylines will be, hey, Denver has figured something out to find success in the fourth quarter and get the job done.
Yeah, I've said the same thing. So I'm on the same boat as you. I actually think Miami wins game 3. I think then they drop, I guess, 4, 5, and 6 to Denver, and Denver wins. And I don't know why. I thought that in the very beginning that somehow Miami would figure it out game 2. They go back to Miami, and then they figure out a way to win game 3, and then Denver bounces back. Their talent shows. And then you're talking about winning 3 in a row, which is crazy. But still, I think it's doable.
But it's a lot of fun, though, to have a finals where you have the clear-cut best guy on both teams that you're cheering for to win a title. Like, I really would love to see either Jimmy or Jokic win a title. Listen, I know that there's, there's fatigue with LeBron and the Warriors and all that. There absolutely is. But it's nice to have a finals now to where you've got two guys who clearly just play basketball for the love of playing basketball, and you want to see one of them win a title. So there's really no bad way to go about doing it. But as just a guy who loves Nikola Jokic, I hope he gets his title.
Yeah, we're the same way, man. We can't, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, man. You are the absolute best, friend of mine. And so just want to say that this has been an awesome show. Rafael Barlowe, if you're hearing this, make sure you go back and listen to his spot in this show. Because he kind of nailed all the good, the draft picks and the deep diving. But also go follow him on Twitter, but also subscribe to his, I guess, website, the NBABigBoard.com. It costs $8, man, just for this month leading up to the draft. Go spend your $8 and go kind of see what he has to say. But that's all we have. It's been a great show. It's been fun.
Daniel, say that one more time. I'm the absolute what?
You're the absolute best.
One more time.
That hurts. It hurts.
Yeah,
you're the best.
Yeah, just sit there and deal with that heartburn. All right, man. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, and it was great getting to talk with Rafael as well.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you all. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review on the show. That's all we got. Be nice and tell your friends.